Brea, Brea. Brea, Brea. Good night, ladies and gentlemen. Good night to our listenership, our viewership. Welcome to the constituency of Brea. I am pleased to be here tonight. Let me first pay my respects to our honorable leader, Dr. Keith Christopher Rowley, to my colleagues, Solange D'Souza and Kennedy Richards, to the Minister of Energy, Mr. Franklin Kahn, to Minister of Housing, Major General Edmund Dillon, to the Deputy Political Leader of the PNM, Ms. Joniel Williams, to Vice Chair of the PNM, Mr. Robert Leigh Hunt, councillors, well-wishers, all. Welcome to Brea. I am not a born son of Brea. I am adopted son of Brea. I was born in, Laramie. I moved to Point Fortin, where I spent my formative years because my father worked in the oil industry and my mother, midwife, grew me up in Point Fortin. So I had no choice as a boy where I grew up. That was solely up to my parents. However, a little later on in life, after I got married, I made a conscious choice to build my home and to rear my children in the general vicinity of Brea. I have been here 30 years now, and I considered myself a true Liberian. I have a pretty unique understanding of this Southwest Peninsula, having traversed both constituencies. And I have gone around the constituency of Brea, which is quite vast. In fact, many Liberians don't know the vastness of the Brea constituency. When you speak to some people in North, they have no idea that Erin and Salazar, Trace and Loten, and those areas are within the boundaries of the Brea constituency. So there is a coin phrase, then Brea, but Brea really refers to the northern end that we are now located in. And I am at pains to continually remind people that Brea is much bigger than this. I have interacted since I have been named the candidate for the constituency of Brea with many of our constituents. I have interacted with the youth, farmers, small businesses, and I have done a number of what we call videos, Real Talk with Steve, that if you go to my Facebook page, Stephen McClashy, PNM candidate for Brea, you will see a number of half an hour to 45 minutes discussions that I would have held with those subgroups and what my thoughts are. I do not have the time tonight to go through each of those, so I encourage you to do it. However, three things that stands out in Brea. The issues we have are jobs, infrastructure, and youth development. Liberians are very concerned about the constituency and the opportunities that are available in the constituency for them. They have very simple needs. They want to work, they want to mind their families, they want to educate their children, they want to have something for that later time in life. Their needs are not great. We have some infrastructural problems that, God willing, we will fix in the next 5 years. But by and large, people are concerned about the future. COVID, although we are well galvanized against it, does not necessarily add to that confidence. I am confident, however, and I pass this on to people all the time, that by making the right choice in this time will only redound to their benefit in the long run. There is a narrative in Labrie, and I get it every single walk I make, that PNM ain't do nothing for me. And it keeps ringing. And you know, sometimes we have to go back to the past to understand the present. And PNM, from my perspective, have always been a party of vision, a party of long-term planning, a party of strategizing, of knowing where we are going, when we are going, how we are doing it. And many times jobs are not created overnight. It's a long, tedious process to get a methanol plant to come to Labrie. It's a long, tedious process to get a smelter to come to Labrie. It's a long, tedious process to get a power plant into Labrie. And when you look historically at what has happened in Labrie, we brought farmland to Labrie, and then Pandy moved it to Point Lisas. We brought the smelter, and we know what happened with that. We brought the issues of building platforms and stuff, and we know what happened to that. And the consistent thread in all of this is that the UNC removed those projects from Labrie. Had those projects stayed, we'd be having a very different conversation now. So when people on the other sides, and there are 5 contenders for Labrie, in case you didn't know, when people on the other side say to us that we did nothing, but they offer nothing as a substitute. They offer nothing as an alternative. All they will say is, vote for us and we will make Labrie great. We will get jobs for people. What jobs? Building box drains? Box drains and banditry are not careers. Box drain finish pretty quickly, and in banditry, police find you too. So you can't spend the money. Labrie residents, I'm speaking to you directly, do not get fooled by the rhetoric, right, that Labrie is somehow dying. Every time something happens in Labrie that is stopped, we come up with a new idea. So we stop the smelter, so we come up with shipbuilding. If you lose the key of your brain and vote another party in to rule this country, to start all over again and push us back 4 years before we go 1 year forward, it will not serve your purpose. The best party to serve your purpose is the People's National Movement. Labrie is a constituency that gives sometimes what people will call a lot of trouble. We don't get trouble, we are passionate people. Passionate people express themselves in a particular way. And because of that passion, we will also bind together to do what is right and to chart a way forward. We have in Labrie some very unique things happening. If the PNM wasn't concerned about Labrie, why do we have Alabitco trying to get new tenants to come in? Why do we have a port running? Why are we doing work on the community center? And for all of you who were driving into Labrie, you would have seen the sign by UDCOT with regards to the Point Door development plan. The velodrome in Palo Seco is under continuous discussion, and we will see the same kind of movement happening there. We say we didn't do anything in Labrie. We say we're not doing anything for the youth. The youth cries out for sports facilities. But you know what? In the last 5 years, we upgraded and provided floodlighting for a number of communities, including number 4 Road, number 8 Road, number 9 Road, Quarry Village, Dali Village, Happy Hill, Rosilac, Sobo Village. That was built for the youth. Very early in my tenure as the Member of Parliament for Brea, and I will be the Member of Parliament for Brea, my first activity would be to create an economic development plan for Brea, including the Southwest Peninsula. If we do not have a structure, we do not have a plan, and we do not have a strategy, how will we know when we get there? How will we know that we need to do certain things one before the other? We cannot operate in silos and every time we have a headache, take a pill and you're suffering from migraine, not a normal headache. You need to know what you have to do, when you have to do it, how you have to do it, and who will be doing it. So as I stand on the stage tonight, in the right place, at the right time, with the right people to guide Trinidad in the right way, I feel confident that we need to get the continuity of what we have started and to bring it to fruition. So, with that, and those who know me, I can talk for the next hour, and I won't, because there are other speakers behind me. I thank you for the opportunity for allowing me to represent the constituency of Brea. My promise to you is to work with you and for you. And therefore, the best vehicle to get me there is the People's National Movement. So, as we say always at the end of a PNM speech, what? Great is the PNM. Great is the PNM. Great is the PNM. And we shall prevail. Up high, we're together in this, you and I. Yes, the job will be done and the race will be won, and we know we will win every time. And we go vote for the love of we country. We go vote to protect the treasure. Thank you very much, Laurel. Political leader of the PNM, Prime Minister, and on the verge of serving a second term of Prime Minister, the Honorable Dr. Keith Christopher Raoul. The candidate for Point Fortin, His Worship the Mayor, Councillor Kennedy Richards, and the next MP for the constituency of Point Fortin.
The candidate for Brea and the next Member of Parliament for Brea, Mr. Stephen McClatchy. Let me pause here a minute. Everybody knows that I am from Mayaro. I represented the constituency of Otto Mayaro as a Member of Parliament. But I also lived most of my adult life in Faizabad. And how I long to see the day when Faizabad returns to the People's National Movement. And I think there's no other person that can give us a better chance than Ms. Solange D'Souza, our candidate and hopefully the next Member of Parliament for Faizabad. Party officers, special recognition to our Vice Chair, and whom I call the quintessential PNM, Deputy Political Leader, Mrs. Joan Yule Williams. Councillors, executive members of the various constituencies, members of the media, ladies and gentlemen. Tonight I want to discuss two very serious issues. One is energy, which I will deal with shortly, and the second is elections. You see, elections are serious things. Elections protect and promote our democracy. Elections are fought in the modern world in a very scientific way. The PNM is versed in fighting election. And we do it well, we do it with diligence, we do it with strategy, and we are doing it with data-driven information. We are coming down to the wire now. We are in the last week. And I have a saying that I always use in the last week. Drunk or sober, mind your business. Very, very serious point. Blunders made in the last week have cost many a party an election. I think the PNM is in front. You know, there's a saying in cricket, left alone is a shot. Don't go flashing outside the off-stump. Stay bat because we are ahead of the runway. Do not go out and play reckless. Do not say things that could hurt our chances of victory. I urge all PNM candidates to so do. This election campaign is a different campaign. There are no mass meetings. There's 20 people in here. When we normally come to Labo, there are hundreds of people. It's a social media campaign. It's a mass media campaign. Come election Saturday, there'll be no rally at Eddie Hart. How it hurts all our heart. But that's the fact of the COVID world. The walkabouts are restricted to 10. Last week it was 25. That is the new reality. But one reality that has not changed is the election itself. And I want people to listen to me carefully. You don't vote on Facebook, you know. You don't vote on Twitter. You don't vote on Instagram. You don't vote on YouTube. On election day, you have to get up, take your maxi, take your taxi, wait for the PNM transport. If you're not getting it, look for your own transport. Go, join the line, and vote for the People's National Movement. That's the only way. The only way you can win an election. And let me put this second caution. We're in a COVID environment. The chances are there will be some inconvenience on polling day. Let's be real. The lines may be long. The lines may be going slow. The EBC officer may tell you to sanitize, and to sanitize again, and to sanitize the stamp. All that you may perceive to be inconvenient, but you have to stick it out. You have to stick it out if you love this party, and if you want Dr. Kito Awoli to be the next Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago. So, I've fought many elections. I've been involved in many elections. And that is my advice, and it is good advice. But let's talk energy. Ladies and gentlemen, without fear of contradiction, the PNM has had a distinguished history and record in energy policy and the energy industry. We were responsible for the monetization of gas. We were responsible for the development of Point Lisas. We were responsible for taking this country into the LNG trade and the LNG business, today Point Fortin at Atlantic. So much so that in 2008, this country earned the highest amount of revenue it has ever earned in its history. And that was largely because of earnings from the LNG trading business. However, by 2010, when we demitted office, the energy sector was on a good footing. There was no gas shortage. As a matter of fact, there was surplus gas. Both petrochemicals and LNG were fully serviced to the required quantities of gas. At that point in time also, in 2010, listen to me, 42.5% of GDP came from the energy sector. 51.4% of government revenue came from the energy sector. Added to this, in 2010 to 2014, high oil prices and gas prices were experienced by the UNC government. $90 per barrel for oil, averaging over the 4-year period, and in excess of $3 US per MMBTU for natural gas. So it was to our shock, dismay, and horror when we came into office in 2015 to find an energy sector and a gas industry in tatters. There was decline in oil and gas production. There was extremely low levels of investment. There were no gas supply contracts for neither upstream nor downstream. And more importantly, there were significant claims in excess of $400 million US against the NGC. This is what we faced when we came into office. And you know why we faced that? Because the UNC left the industry virtually to collapse. There's something called the Standing Committee on Energy, which is a committee that is chaired by the Prime Minister. It was chaired by the Honorable Patrick Manning, deceased. I was on the Standing Committee of Energy when I was Minister of Works under the Manning administration. Under the UNC, that probably the only other committee of the cabinet that is probably more important than that is the National Security Council, which is also chaired by the Prime Minister. Under the UNC, over the 5 years, 20 Standing Committee of Energy meetings were held. 20. The chairman of the Standing Committee of Energy, which is the Honorable Prime Minister then, Kamala Prasad-Lisetta, didn't attend a single meeting. Not a single meeting. Most of the meeting was chaired by the Minister of Finance, Mr. Larry Hawaii. Ladies and gentlemen, it was the one eye leading the blind. So when we came into office in 2015, we had to get leadership from the top. And that leadership was provided by the Honorable Dr. Keith Wright. He immediately engaged the energy companies, and they committed to an investment profile of $10 billion US over the next 5 years. As I speak, it is even better than that. By December 2019, they had already invested $8.5 billion US, and they plan to spend $6.2 billion US between 2020 and 2022. That is leadership from the top. We have arrested the gas supply shortage. we have, because to produce gas, you have to drill wells. To produce gas, you must bring on new platforms and bring on new reserves. As we speak, there are several projects that are on stream that are already sanctioned by by BP, Shell, BHP, and EOG. In 2020, Angeline was developed. Angeline produces 350 million standard cubic feet per day. In 2021, the Barracuda field from Shell will be developed. Barracuda will produce 240 standard million cubic feet per day. In 2022, a field called Matapal, which is owned by BP, will be developed. Matapal will produce 275 million standard cubic feet per day. In 2022, also Colibri, which is a Shell field, will come in at 250 million cubic feet per day. Later on in 2023, BP will be developing the Jasmine field and the Ginger field, and both of them will be producing approximately 150 million standard cubic feet per day. And this is the big one, Manatee, which will be developed by Shell, and we expect first production around 2025. Let me put this Manatee things into context. You've heard the Prime Minister spoke about it. The entire proven reserves of Trinidad and Tobago is approximately 10.5 trillion cubic feet of gas. Not billion, trillion. The Loran Manatee field alone is 10 trillion cubic feet of gas. Trinidad and Tobago, unfortunately or fortunately, owns only 27% of that field. The Loran part of it is in Venezuela. There was a unitization agreement where that unitization agreement in international law states you have to jointly develop the field. We couldn't wait on Venezuela. Venezuela have their own challenges. The Prime Minister, through the highest level diplomacy, engaged the government of Venezuela and was successful in getting them to decouple Manatee from Loran. So that today we have come out of the unitization treaty by mutual consent between the government of Venezuela and the government of Trinidad and Tobago, so that Shell can now proceed to develop the Manatee field, which will peak at a production of 450 million standard cubic feet per day. That is planning. That is leadership. That is leading from the top. Because of that, our production forecast is looking better now. In 2016, 2017, the country produced 2.3 billion cubic feet per day. Right now, we are around 2.6 to 2.7. We hope to reach 3.9 in 2019, 2020. And we hope to stabilize at 4 billion standard cubic feet per day by 2022 and beyond. So that's the state of play in the gas sector, because you have to produce the gas. You have to feed Atlantic, and you have to feed the petrochemical sector. On the deepwater side, another set of good news. BHP has drilled over this last 2.5 years 9 deepwater exploration wells at a cost of almost $1 billion. The Invictus drill ship, which is a deepwater drill ship, is coming back to Trinidad at the end of this month. They are coming to drill a well called Broadside, which will be the deepest well ever to be drilled in the history of Trinidad and Tobago. That well is going to cost a whopping $100 million. That's the level of direct foreign investment we are speaking about, that has been crafted and that has been attracted by proper energy policy articulated by this People's National Movement government. And finally, the news gets better. There's a COVID challenge in the world. Every country in the world is suffering from lack of capital investment because economies are slowing down. We are fortunate that BP, Shell, BHP, and EOG have decided to maintain their level of investment in Trinidad and Tobago. That is despite BP and Shell having a global cutback on capital expenditure of 30%. Trinidad and Tobago has remained untouched. Trinidad and Tobago has remained untouched. And you know why? Something good has to be happening here. Something good has to be happening. And you know what is good? We have a stable government that is led by our Prime Minister, Dr. Keith Christopher. A government that understands what it is doing. A government that can meet the leaders of the business sector, the energy sector, in their various capitals and speak to them one-on-one. Articulate our country's position from the top. And we treat each other with mutual respect. There are some challenges with downstream. Because you will see on the newspaper a couple plants in Point Lisas are being put to idle for repairs and for maintenance work. Ladies and gentlemen, the narrative of the UNC is that that is because of the high gas prices that NGC is selling gas to the downstreamers at. And that they link that what they call high gas prices, to some meeting Dr. Rowley went to in Houston. Nothing is further from the truth. At that point in time, there were no gas supply contracts for upstream, no downstream. The industry was about to collapse. NGC was negotiating with BP and EOG at the time in Houston, and they couldn't come to agreement. If they couldn't come to agreement and the gas contracts expired, all hell would have broken loose. What should a leader do? The leader took the bull by the horn and went up to Houston and said, hey guys, I'm not here to negotiate no oil price with you. I'm here to bring you back on the table. Like mature business executive, sit down and talk it through and come up with a price that is agreeable to BP, to EOG, to the NGC, and to the people of Trinidad and Tobago. And that is what was done. But what is happening in Point Lisas now is the total collapse of the methanol and ammonia market. Because, ladies and gentlemen, the world is driven by consumerism. Trade is conducted when I sell you something that you need. It's called supply and demand. So if the demand has fallen, what do you do with your supply? If you keep your factories running at the same level and demand has dropped 50%, your inventories will build. And then you have nowhere to sell it. And that will impact on a collapse of the price. That is what happened to oil a couple months ago when it went to zero and it went to negative. Both methanol and ammonia were trading at close to $400 per metric ton at the beginning of this year. Right now, both products are selling at less than $200 per metric ton. The industry cannot survive like that. That is no fault of the PNM. That is no fault of Dr. Rowley or Minister Khan. That is the international market conditions. Fortunately for Trinidad, and I say so guardedly, we have, operating in the petrochemical sector here in Trinidad, 4 of the world's leading petrochemical producers. Pullman, Methanex, Yara, and Nutria. They are in the global market. They have a portfolio of factories all over the world. And they have advised us that they are here for the long run. They are here for the long term. They will ride through this depressed period of low prices, rallied through as best as they could by cutting costs and shutting in some plants temporarily, and hope that the market picks up later in the year to come back to 300 or so US dollars per metric ton. So on the upstream side, we're looking good. On the Atlantic side, we are discussing with Atlantic to restructure the LNG trains. The downstream side, we face some challenges, but I think we will overcome them in due course. What that means, ladies and gentlemen, is that your P&M administration has handled in a most effective way the energy sector, which defines the fortunes of the people of Trinidad and Tobago. So, the gas industry is challenged all over the world. Henry Hub prices are now under $2. Today it went up to $2.19. Oil prices have struggled over the last several months. Now it is inching its way beyond $40. Today it was $44 per barrel. So if the prices pick up and the global economy starts to revive, I think we have put the template and the framework in place to have a turnaround in the energy sector, and that will be reflected on the revenue stream. Now, let me deal with revenue. Oil and gas are what you call wasting assets. They are non-renewable. This country produces approximately 1 trillion cubic feet of gas per annum. What that means, that's a hell of a lot of gas, ladies and gentlemen. It means when you produce that gas, it is not replenishable. You have to go and look to find new gas. And when you are a resource-based economy dealing with a depleting asset, what you call a wasting resource, whether it's oil and gas, whether it's coal, whether it's uranium, whether it's iron ore, whether it's copper, whether it's zinc, whether it's lead, or whether it's diamond, your taxation system must be robust enough so that the state can extract its fair share of economic rent. And that was the real crisis that we met. Because it's all well and good to produce gas, but if the country gets no money from it, it makes no sense. You're giving it away. And what we faced was a significant decrease in revenue. And the decrease in revenue was caused by 3 factors. One, a decrease in commodity prices, which was gas and oil. 2, declining production. But the more significant point on the decrease in revenue was incentives, unthought of incentives, and I will almost say reckless incentive that the UNC offered to the energy companies. I will quote 2. There's something called exploration drilling, which is very expensive. The UNC allowed the energy companies to write off the full cost of exploration expenditure in the year in which it was done. So in other words, if you drilled an exploration well for $80 million US and you drill 3 of that, right? 3 8s are 24, right? $240 million US, you can write off against your profit in that very year. Other than that, in other capital expenditures, they had what they call accelerated depreciation. The UNC offered the companies 50% write-off in the first year, 30% in the second year, 20% in the third year. We changed all that. We brought them to the table through the initiative of our Prime Minister. And we said, hey guys, this cannot be allowed to continue. We changed that from 50, 30, 20 to 20, 20, 20, 20 in a straight line over 5 years. So if you spread out your depreciation, it brings in more revenue to the country. And we stopped the exploration expenditure write-off in the first year. That was the single most important thing that this government has done. So that the revenue now has started to pick back up. The other thing we did was the introduction of the royalty on gas. Ladies and gentlemen, I'll tell you a stunning piece of information. Prior to the Minister of Finance and the Cabinet instituting a 12.5% royalty on gas, you know what was the royalty on gas? 1.5 TT cents per 1,000 cubic feet. That and zero is the same thing. Because of that single act of instituting the 12.5% royalty on natural gas, our royalty revenue increased from $400 million TT in 2016 to $3 billion TT in 2019. And that's what your government has done for you. That's what leadership is about. That is what sound planning is about. And that is what knowing how to engage these companies. And I want to pay credit to the oil companies. Because when our Prime Minister went to the capitals of the energy sector, to The Hague in Holland for Shell, to London, England for BP, to Melbourne, Australia for BHP, and then to EOG's headquarters in Houston. He didn't go to quarrel, you know. He didn't go to argue with them, you know. He went to sit down as big people who understand what they're about. He told them, you have shareholders. I respect that. You need a fair rate of return for your investment. But I have shareholders also. My shareholders are the people of Trinidad and Tobago. And we cannot sit idly by and see our revenue depleted to such an extent that it is untenable for the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. They listened. They said, let's talk. And by those discussions, we were able to recover billions of dollars in back payment from both BP and Shell. Because of confidentiality clauses, I cannot give you the exact figures. When we met with them, under the leadership of Dr. Rowley, we said, we have to sit and negotiate. We have to open the contracts. I'll give you a specific example, which is I already said our biggest accomplishment. This is way up there too. When LNG was traded in the old agreements, it was pegged at what we call Henry Hub price. Because LNG sales are long-term contracts. Henry Hub price, when these agreements were signed, was high. There was a time Trinidad used to export all its LNG to Boston. With shale gas in the United States, LNG prices collapsed in the US. But the contracts indicated that irrespective of where you sell, the price that is quoted on the books in Trinidad is according to the contract, which is Henry Hub. So we had clear evidence that while they were paying Trinidad Henry Hub price for our gas, the gas was being sold in Asia, in China, in Hong Kong, in South Korea at 3 times the price. We met with them, we explained that to them, they understood, and we have now come up with a formula which we call Train 1 pricing, which is a basket of gas markets, which is 1/3 Brent, 1/3 European market, and 1/3 the Asian market. And that basket of price will give you a price that is virtually double the Henry Hub price for all new gas that is produced under new licenses. And the projects that I outlined earlier will come under that. So, we have done well under the leadership of our Prime Minister. And I want to share one further point here with the nation. When the Prime Minister met with the leaders of the energy sector, it was decided to establish what we call an empowered negotiating team of technocrats and led by 2 ministers. Myself, as Minister of Energy, and the Minister in the Office of the Prime Minister, the Honorable Stuart Young. And today, I want this nation to know that we owe a debt of gratitude to the Honorable Stuart Young for his contribution in this whole exercise. He has been very, very instrumental in these negotiations because as a litigation lawyer, he knew what to say, what not to say. I was there at his side. I've been an expert in the field of energy, but he was the expert negotiator. And both of us worked diligently together as a team to deliver these results for Trinidad and Tobago. That gentleman is young, he is bright, he is productive, he's an extremely hard worker. That is why the UNC going after him. He is an asset to the People's National Movement and the government of Trinidad and Tobago. I make no apologies for that. And the nation should know that. Because very rarely you get a young person coming in and finding their way so soon and so quickly. I have been in the PNM for 20 years. 10 years I've spent as chairman, and never in my 20-year period in UNC have I seen a young politician come in, felt so comfortable with the atmosphere, and has contributed so significantly to the development of the party and the development of the country in a PNM administration. I say no more. So finally, let me just say something about Petrotrin. The Petrotrin narrative has been well spoken. We've heard the restructuring. We've heard heritage performance from a loss of $2 billion to a profit of $1.4 billion after paying all taxes to the state aid, $150 million, and servicing the foreign debt of Petrotrin. We have heard the narrative of Brea, being able to give a seamless supply of fuel, a seamless supply of LPG to the nation, without blinking an eye. Have been able to supply the CARICOM market, and they have still turned around a profit of in excess of $100 million in their first year. The refinery, and I'll close on the refinery. We could not, in any sane conscience, keep that refinery running. The plan was to temporarily shut it down, go out to the international market for bidders, which we did. Refinery was losing. We were importing too much oil. Trinidad was producing just about 40,000 barrels of oil. That was Petrotrin's oil. We were importing 100 to 120,000 barrels of crude every day at $60 a barrel and losing $7 a barrel on each barrel. It was unsustainable as a business model. So we instituted this plan. International tender was won by Patriotic Energy Limited, a company wholly owned by the Oilfield Workers Trade Union. This administration holds no brief for the OWTU, but they won the bid. We respected that. They're the only company that offered an upfront cash payment of $700 million US. The government facilitated that and said, okay, we understand that, but we want the refinery started as soon as possible. We give you a 3-year moratorium on the payment and a 10-year period to repay, so that the initial capital you raise could be spent on restarting the refinery as soon as possible. We started negotiations. And let me just say something to this country. The sale of a refinery is a very complex document. It's called a sale and purchase agreement. It covers a series of issues. It has to do with the transfer of the assets. It has to do with a seller's note, because the seller's note will cover the conditions under which you pay the $700 million. It has to deal with issues of liability, environmental liability, issue of placing of bonds, issues of insurance. It is a very, very thick, complex agreement. I, as Minister of Energy, who is the line minister for Garakara, have to be diligent so that I would not take to cabinet an agreement that I am not comfortable with. So the negotiation team, which is headed by the chairman of Brea, is doing human service to this country. And we are in a very, very advanced stage in the negotiation. I see no encumbrances in bringing that negotiation to a close. But what I would say is that the government will not be bullied into signing the agreement before August the 10th. So all these newspaper articles, OWTU, government guilty of bad faith on the refinery. Patriotic to Roger. No, patriotic to Rowley. Close refinery deal before election. And Roger wants refinery deal closed before election. We will not do that. We are not irresponsible. We are negotiating in good faith. I can give you the assurance that the deal is almost there. There's still a couple of little issues to trash out. But when we go to the cabinet with a sales and a purchase agreement for its approval, it will be a very robust document that is seeking the interests of Trinidad and Tobago. Because at the end of the day, when you put pen to paper, that is it, you have no recourse after that. Once you put pen to paper, the lawyers come back and watch you in your eye. They were smiling at you around the table yesterday, and today they say, check clause 10. What does it say? With no emotions at all. And that is the type of negotiation that your government is doing for you. So, here we are. We have rode some very rough waters, but I think we have done well. And under the leadership of Dr. Keith Christopher Rowley, the PNM is the right choice. So come August the 10th, remember what I told you at the beginning of the meeting. Get up. You can't vote on Facebook. You can't vote on Twitter. You can't vote on YouTube. You can't vote on Instagram. You have to physically get up, walk, drive, ride, or run to the polling station, join the line, put on your mask, sanitize your hand, stand the grind, and go and put your X by the Balizi. And I say, great is the PNM, and it shall prevail.